got super technologically advanced while we had our snowstorm because I won't be here today, tomorrow, or Friday. So I wanted to make videos so we could stay up to pace because we do have your test in January and we can't lose any more time. So today we're going to be going over animals and their development. So if you will take out your note packets and turn to the page that says the animal kingdom at the top, it should have a number 1 on the bottom in the right hand corner. So go ahead and take a second to do that. If you need to pause the video for a second while you do, that's totally fine. You can do that. So we talked about classification. You should know your 6 kingdoms. You have Archaebacteria, Eubacteria, Protists, fungi, plants, and animals. So today we're going to be specifically talking about the animal kingdom and what actually makes up an animal. All right, so if you're on your notes, you should be where it says animal kingdom at the top. What is an animal? Well, to be an animal, you only actually have to have 4 characteristics. Okay, the first one is you have to be a eukaryote. So eu means do. You have a nucleus and you have those organelles, those tiny little organs inside the cell. You're very complex. You're multicellular, so you're made of many cells. You're a heterotroph. Okay, so if you remember heterotroph, that means you consume your food, you don't make it inside your body. A sublevel of that will be intracellular digestion, so you digest your food inside the body. It is not external like fungi when they decompose their food. And you have specialized cells. That just means that your blood cells, your nerve cells, your skin cells, your brain cells, these are all different and they do their own job. So these 4 things make up an animal, and we're going to be talking about animals today. All right, so you should now be to where it says body structure on your note sheet. So for an animal, we come in a variety of shapes and sizes. You do not look the same as a butterfly. Okay, so we call the grouping symmetry, and you know what symmetry is. You learned this when you were hopefully in like kindergarten, I don't know, 2nd grade, something like that. So we have different types of symmetry, and symmetry just means I can cut you down the middle and I'm going to be the same on the left side as I am on the right side. All right, so symmetry is the arrangement of our body structure. Okay, now some things like sponges are asymmetrical. So if you'll look right here, this side is symmetric, so this side is the same as the right side, but here the left side and the right side are not the same, so there's no symmetry. We call it asymmetrical. And if you look at a sea sponge, if I divided it down this line right here, this side, the right side, and the left side would not be the same, so that is asymmetrical. And again, an example is a sea sponge. Okay, the next type of symmetry is radial symmetry, and if you think of something that has a radius, that will be a circle. So most of these have like a circular shape. So you have the jellyfish, and then you have these things called hydras. And this just means if you have radial symmetry, I can cut you into several different planes. I could cut the jellyfish from here to here or from here to here, and it would be the same on the left side as it would be on the right side. So there are several planes that I could cut you into. There are other things that you could think of that have radial symmetry. If you think of cutting like a nickel would have radial symmetry because you could cut it in several places. You could cut it horizontally or vertically, and it would be the same on the left side as it is on the right side. Okay, so that's radial symmetry. And then you have bilateral symmetry. And bilateral, this is us humans. Bi means 2. All right, and this just means that you can be divided evenly along one plane. So if you take, and you're the same on the left side as you are on the right side. So if you look at a butterfly right here, if I cut him straight down the middle, he is the same on the left side as he is on the right side. Same thing if I took this organism and cut him right down the middle, it will be the same. Now, a lot of you know that humans do not have, the heart is more on the left side, but essentially looking at us, if you cut us down the middle, we would be the same on the left as we would the right. So here is an example of this too with the lobster. All right, so that's bilateral symmetry. Okay, you have your next blank is going to be this slide right here. Animals also have what we call cephalization. Cephala, if you remember from doing your stems, that would mean head. All right, so this just means that your sense organs are concentrated at the head of your body. So whenever you touch something really hot, your sense organs are going to send that information up to your brain, and your brain's going to process it, and you are going to take your hand off of the burner. All right, so this just means that animals process information from their environment through their brain, and that's what we call cephalization. So on your sheet, you should have cephalization is sense organs concentrated at the head of the body. Okay? All right, so when we're describing animals, we have what we call directional terminology, and this just helps scientists describe parts of the body on every organism they study. All right, and so if you are standing up on your feet and you stand with your palms forward, that is the anatomical position that they always talk about. All right, and you have several parts. We call your head the anterior, we call your tail the posterior, we call your back your dorsal side, and we call your stomach the ventral side. Okay, so make sure that you get all four of these written down on your sheet, and then we'll go to the next slide and you can also copy that. Okay, so again, anterior means head, dorsal means back, posterior means tail, and ventral means belly. And a way that scientists describe directions of organisms, if you think, look at your hand, your palm of your hand would be ventral to the back side of your hand. Okay, so if you're just looking down at your head or at your hand, it's on your belly side, so the palm would be ventral to the back of your hand. And that's just how they describe it. Other ones would be like superior and inferior. Superior would be above, inferior would be below. So your neck would be inferior to your head. All right, so these are just describing the position of parts of your body essentially. Okay, now a couple things that we need to talk about as far as bilateral symmetry are things called coeloms. A coelom is a body cavity, and this just means that you have space for your organs. So some animals are what we call acoelomates. A means not, so they don't have a body cavity. Another one is a pseudocoelomate, and pseudo means false, so false cavity. That just means they have a partial one, but not yet. And then a coelomate means that they have space for all of these organs. All right, so we're coelomates. We have space for all of our organs, and that's why we have our organ systems. Okay, don't worry about that too much. There's not a place for it, but I just wanted to introduce that before I go over types of animals. All right, so how do you develop? How do you become the person that you are? Well, of course, when egg and sperm meet together, you form what we call a zygote. And a zygote is the very first cell. We went over that a while back when we were talking about meiosis. If y'all remember, I hope you do. Okay, so the egg and the sperm meet up, and you were once a little baby zygote. Remember when I showed you the PowerPoint with the really weird looking baby that was kind of deformed? It has the weird cheek and the leg. Yeah, it once started as a zygote. All right, so that's the very first cell, but you don't stop there. Obviously, your cells keep dividing through mitosis, and you form what we call a blastula. And a blastula is just a hollow ball of cells. So if you take your hands and you cup them together, that forms a blastula. So right here, if you look, this is one cell becoming two, then two becomes four, and then so on until finally you become a hollow ball of cells. All right, and this just has a special name. We call it the blastula. All right. So the blastula is actually made up of all the same type of cells that we call stem cells. And if you've heard of stem cells, they're really big in cancer research because they are all the same. Stem cells have the ability to become any cell you want them to. They could become blood cells, they could become muscle cells, nerve cells, anything you kind of want to, which is awesome for scientists because sometimes if you need like blood cells or if you needed nerve cells, you could have the ability to create them. All right, so that's a really big deal in cancer research right now. But the point is, at first, you are just a ball of hollow cells, and all of your cells are the exact same. Okay? It's not until you become what we call a gastrula that you start to differentiate. Okay, so here's your hollow ball of cells. This is your blastula. Well, eventually you get so big that one part starts to cave in, and that, if you see that right here where my mouse is, okay? So it's like taking a beach ball, and where the little lip is that you blow into, it's like taking it and pushing it in. That is a gastrula. All right, so here you have your zygote again. Your hollow ball of cells is a blastula, and then you start to have your gastrula, and this is where you are going to start to differentiate. All right, it forms what we call our germ layers. All right, and our germ layers are going to be very, very important in the production of our organ systems. All right, so you should have germ layers at the very bottom where it says number 4. The layers of gastrula start to differentiate into germ layers. Okay, so I want you to flip over in your notes to the next page. And so whenever you have your gastrula, you are going to have 3 sections. Okay, you have the outside. This is what we're going to call the ectoderm. You're going to have the inside that folds in. That's what we call the endoderm. And then you're going to have this part right here in the middle. That's what we call the mesoderm. And these are going to form your different organ systems. So first you have the ectoderm. Ecto means outside. Okay, this is your outer layer, and part of you that is outside is your skin. So the ectoderm, when these cells here start differentiating, they're going to become skin cells and nerve cells. Okay, so this ectoderm is going to form your skin and your nervous system. Okay, so make sure that you have taken an arrow and labeled on your sheet the ectoderm, and you also put on your sheet ectoderm, outer layer that produces skin and nervous system tissues. Okay, so that's the ectoderm. Next, we want to talk about the endoderm. Endo means inside. That's your inner layer. Okay, so that's this yellow part right here that has been folded in. And inside of you, you have your digestive system. All right, and so actually, I think at this folding right here, that would either form your mouth or your butt. Okay, it's different things form first. In some organisms, the mouth forms first. In some organisms, the butt forms first. Okay, I think in humans, it's the mouth. But that will be this little opening right here. And then meso means middle. So this is this middle section. This is everything else. This is your muscular system, your respiratory system, your circulatory system, and your excretory system. So your muscular system, those are your muscles, obviously. Your respiratory system, you know what respiration is. It has to do with oxygen and carbon dioxide. That's breathing. Your circulatory system, this is your circulation, this is blood, this is your heart. And then your excretory system, that would be like your urine, things like that. Okay, so it's really hard to imagine all of these little cells creating you, but that's just what happens. So this outer part will become your skin and your nervous tissue. This inner part, your endoderm, will become your digestive system, and this middle part will become everything else, your muscular, respiratory, circulatory, and excretory systems. And so when these form, they all become you, the person you are today. All right? Now, after you develop all that good thing, we're past all that, we are going to talk about classification. Okay, and there are 2 different ways that we categorize a lot of animals. And that's if you have a vertebrate, if you're a vertebrate, or if you're an invertebrate. So if you know what a vertebrate is, it is a backbone. Okay, so we are vertebrates. We have a back, we have a spine. So vertebrates have a backbone protecting your essential nerve, your spinal cord. Sorry. So vertebrates have a backbone protecting your spinal cord, but there's only 4% of us. So of all the animals, only 4% of them are vertebrates. The rest are invertebrates, and actually a lot of them live in the ocean. If it weren't for insects and things like that, it would be a lot more. But invertebrates, in means not, they do not have a backbone protecting their spinal cord. All right, so we're going to talk about these, and I really don't want you to worry about them too much. I just like them because of the pictures and seeing kind of our evolution. So we're going to talk about the invertebrates first, which is 96% of all animal species, and then we're going to talk about the vertebrates, and that's us. Okay, so first on our list for the invertebrates is what we call it phylum Porifera. Okay, and these are just your sponges. Okay, these Porifera means pore bearers. because of how they filter water and nutrients into their bodies. All right, so you know a sponge. You've watched SpongeBob. Let's look at him. Where is he? Whoop, there he is. SpongeBob would be a part of the phylum Porifera. Okay, he is a pore bearer, so water moves in and out, and he would also be a filter feeder. Okay, a filter feeder means he's just going to suck the nutrients in from that are passing by in the ocean. So SpongeBob really does not eat Krabby Patties. Okay, and SpongeBob is not. He's actually supposed to be sessile. Sessile means that he lives in one spot, anchored there forever. He does not move. Okay, so sponges, they cannot travel, and they are anchored to one spot. Okay, so it'd be like you living your whole life in one little place and never being able to move, period. So those are sponges. That's phylum Porifera. Next, you have your cnidarians, so phylum Cnidaria, and this means stinging hairs. So if you think about going back for a second to Porifera, these are at your cellular level. These are all specialized cells. You actually don't have tissues, but here you do actually have tissues. All right, now they do have tentacles, and that's where you get your stingers from. And they can be sessile or they can be mobile, so they could be anchored to one spot forever, or they can move. And they have a nervous system that consists of a nerve net. But that's all for cnidarians. They have tentacles, things like that. They also exhibit radial symmetry, so if you look at your jellyfish, you could cut him along different planes and he would still be the same. All right, next you have the phylum Platyhelminthes, which is a long name, but it only pretty much means flatworm. All right, so these are your flatworms. They do have cephalization and a nerve cord, so that just means that they can sense things, and their nerves are connected to their brain where they process it. All right, most of them are parasites, and they need moist environments to live. Okay, so those are your Platyhelminthes. An example, if you don't have it down, is a tapeworm, a fluke, a planarian, just flatworms. All right, this is phylum Nematoda. If you remember SpongeBob, he's like, darn nematodes. This is what they look like whenever you saw them on SpongeBob. Right there, like no eyes, really boring. But anyway, phylum Nematoda. These are your roundworms. All right, and they have what we call a pseudocoelomate. I told you coelom means body cavity. So they have a partial body cavity. They almost have one, but not quite. But they do have a mouth and a butt. So you can thank your friends, the worms. They are big in our evolution for giving you a mouth and a butt. They have a digestive system. All right. They are found in aquatic or terrestrial environments, and they are also usually parasites. So an example is a hookworm, a pinworm, and an ascaris. And again, I just want to show you pictures. Don't worry too much about them. I'm just trying to describe some things I've talked about earlier in the lecture. All right, this is phylum Mollusca, or mollusks. Okay, what's cool about them is they have shells made of calcium carbonate or partially made of calcium carbonate. And here you are going to have organs, organ systems, and finally intelligence. So if you remember back to the sponges, they are specialized cells. Then you have specialized tissues with the cnidarians, with the jellyfish. And now we have specialized organs, organ systems, and we have intelligence. And a good example of intelligence is the octopus. Octopi are very, very, very intelligent. If you've seen Finding Dory and you know about Hank, this is Hank right here. Hank, it actually took them 2 years to make this scene in Finding Dory. And if you'll look at him, he blends in very, very well. He also blended in with a vase with water in it. And this is how they really, really move. It took them 2 years to make it because they wanted to get down to proper movement of the octopus. So if you'll look at this little video right here, it's really cool. It's going to show you how an octopus camouflages himself with his environment. One more time, because I know I like it. these organisms are very smart, and I actually went with Miss Harper's marine class to the aquarium this past weekend, and what they did with their octopi was they put their food in a Mr. Potato Head can, and they would make the octopi open them to get out their food. They are very, very intelligent, so they're really, really cool invertebrates, and that's phylum Mollusca. So on your sheet, you should have example would be the octopus, and now you can turn over to the next side of your sheet where we will talk about annelids. All right, this is phylum Annelida. They are segmented worms, and that's going to help them burrow. So if you look here, they have all their little segments. And you have what we call elychites that have no bristles, and you have these things called polychaetes, which means bristles. So if you look here, these are their bristles that make them, that help them move a lot. They do have a coelom, so they do have space for body cavities. All right. So they have a digestive system, and they're actually pretty complex. When you think of worms, you don't think of a lot of complexity, but worms are very, very important to our evolution because finally you have a lot of these body systems. Okay. So an example of the phylum Annelid would be an earthworm. All right, next you have arthropods. Arthra means joint, like you got the arthritis. Pod means foot. Okay, so these are segmented feet. That means they have joints. Okay, so they have jointed appendages. That's what arthro and pod means. And they are very, very diverse. They have segmented bodies. They have an exoskeleton, so they have a protection around them. Again, they have jointed appendages, and they have several subphylums. So they have a lot of different organisms that exist here. If you look, you have butterflies, you have lobster, you have horseshoe crab. These are all very different, but they're very important because they're actually the first guys that made it onto land, and we know this because of the horseshoe crab. Okay. The horseshoe crab, it lives in water, but it can move up. So that is your phylum Arthropoda, sorry. All right, you have a couple of other subphylum within the arthropods. I told you they're very, very, very diverse. So first you have your crustaceans. So that's your crabs, your shrimp, your lobsters, things like that. I'm not going to pretend like I know how to say these words. Chelicerata, that's a horseshoe crab, a spider, a tick, a scorpion. So if you look, the horseshoe crab and the spider are actually in the same subphylum, which is very interesting because they are so different. You also have Uniramia, which are your millipedes, centipedes, and insects. Okay, so your insects are in the phylum Arthropoda. All right, and next you have phylum Echinodermata, echinoderms, meaning spiny skin. Okay, so these are organisms that have spines sticking out of their bodies, and they have 2 feet for movement. And examples of these, the first one right here, this is a sea urchin. Starfish are in this category. Okay, so these are echinodermata. Whew, all right, moving on. The next one is phylum Chordata, and this was actually very, very important. You have 4 spaces. So, in order to be considered a chordate, you have to have 4 characteristics, and if you look up here, chordates, you have invertebrates and vertebrates, so they're different, okay? So, phylum Chordates, you have, in order to be one, you have to have a dorsal hollow nerve cord. What does that mean? A hollow nerve cord is essentially like a spinal cord, so it's going to reach up to the brain. You're going to have a notochord, which is going to protect the nerve cord. A notochord is essentially, it's kind of like a spine. It's going to protect your nerve cord because if you think about it, our spine protects our spinal cord, which runs to our brain and it holds all of our senses. Everything you sense is going to go to your spinal cord and back down. So you have to have protection. That's what that is. Pharyngeal pouches, think of your pharynx. Your pharyngeal pouches are just gills. And then you also have a tail that extends past the anus. All right, so most of these animals are vertebrates, but some do not have a vertebral column. Okay? So you have 2 types again. You have your non-vertebrate chordates and you have your vertebrate chordates. So your non-vertebrate chordates examples are tunicates and lancelets. Tunicates are just sea squirts. They're pretty boring. Lancelets are too. They, if you remember back to our cladograms sheet, the lancelets, they were very they're not evolutionarily advanced. Okay, they're pretty boring, but that's just how they are. They do not have, they are not vertebrates. And then you have your vertebrate chordots, and these are your fish. Okay, so of course fish are very diverse. They do have a vertebrae. That means they do have a they have bone. Okay, they have a backbone. So fish most have fins, scales, and gills. All right, so we divide them into three types. You have your jawless fishes, which is your class Myxini. You have your chondrichthyes. These are your sharks. Chondra means jawbone, so these have jaws. And then you have your bony fish, and bony just means osteichthyes. Okay, so sharks are chondrichthyes, bony fish are osteichthyes. Okay, so here's some examples of them. Your class Myxini, that's your hagfish. All right, and then cephalospidomorphi, these are your lampreys. These are these right here. Both of these do not have, but both of these are very, very, very unevolutionarily advanced. They do not have jaws, so they look like this. All right, but then finally you have your jawed fishes, which are your sharks, your skates, your rays, and then you have your osteichthyes, which are your really, really bony fish. Okay, so you take a second and write down these examples. And then you can turn to the back and we are almost done. All right, now we're going to focus on vertebrates. And vertebrates do have a backbone. So, of course, you have your amphibians. These are the ones that we like to learn about. Amphibians means double life. Okay, so when they are in their larval stage, when they're little bitty babies, they live in water, and they are adults on land. If you look at a frog, you know what a frog is when it's a baby. It's a tadpole, and it eventually turns into a frog. Tadpoles live in water. Adults live on land. Okay, so these amphibians are going to include salamanders, frogs and toads, and caecilians, and they are called ectotherms. Ecto again means outside, and therm means heat. Okay, so they regulate their body temperature with the changing heat of their environment. So if it's really, really cold, it's going to make them cold. If it's really, really hot, it's going to make them really, really warm. So ectotherms, most of their body temperature is regulated by their environment. Now, they can change it some, like let's say it's a really cold day. Of course, they're going to go out and bask in the sunshine. If it's really, really hot, they're going to find some shade. But those are amphibians. Okay. Next, you have reptiles. Reptiles have dry, scaly skin. They have lungs. They lay their eggs on land. And you have snakes. You have turtles. Things like that. You know them, crocodiles. So they are also ectotherms. They also regulate their body temperature from the outside, whether they bask in the sun. They look for places that are cooler and shaded, things like that. But those are the reptiles. Okay? All right, now if you think about birds and mammals, actually they're kind of similar, but one thing you want to ask yourself is, do I have feathers or do I have hair? If you have feathers, you are a bird. If you have hair, you are a mammal. Okay, so your birds are covered in feathers. They have two legs covered in scales. They have wings. You know what a bird looks like. They maintain an internal body temperature. So unlike amphibians and reptiles, they are endotherms, so they regulate their temperature inside based on metabolism. Okay, and we have a lot of different groups of them. It says 30 orders grouped according to where they live and how they eat. So we have a lot of different classes of birds. Okay. They also have, I believe, a 3 or 4 chambered heart, and we have a 4 chambered heart. They also have hearts like us. Finally, you have your mammals. Okay, there's Perry the platypus right there. You have a cute little koala. All right, dolphins are mammals. So, mammals, in order to be a mammal, you have to have hair. Okay, you have hair. This koala has hair. The platypus has hair. All right, you nourish your young through mammary glands. You know what a mammogram is when females go get their breast checked. That just means that they use their breast to feed their young. What do they feed them? Milk. Okay, so they have to have mammary glands. You have lungs. You have lungs, you breathe in and out. Increase, decrease in volume. 4 chambered hearts. Okay, so you have a four-chambered heart. You have two ventricles. And then you have two atriums. So your heart moves through. Your blood moves through your left side, travels up, and then it comes back through your right side. Okay. Mammals are divided into monotremes, marsupials, and placental mammals. Okay, so marsupials are going to carry their young in a pouch. Placental mammals, that's us. We have our placenta. Babies are trapped in there in their mother's wombs, and that's how they get their nourishment. And you have the monotremes. And I believe that monotremes, they just I think they do external fertilization. Hold on just one second. I'm looking. Yeah, so the monotremes, they actually lay their eggs. So there are mammals that lay their eggs. That will be the monotremes. The marsupials carry their young in a pouch. So kangaroos, and then placental mammals, they carry their young and their young gets nourishment from inside of them. Okay, so those are mammals. And that is it. That's all I have for you. Make sure you know those three: marsupials, monotremes, and placentals, because that's really big with mammals, how they carry their young and how they have their babies. So make sure you know that. Monotremes, they lay their eggs. Marsupials are going to carry their young in the pouch. And then we have a placenta that is able to give our young the nourishment it needs while it's in the womb. All right. Great job, guys. Make sure you took your notes. It's going to be to your benefit that you have them, and good luck on your test.